Gap years are surprisingly very controversial. A lot of people told me that I shouldn't take one, that it was bad. Anyway, I've weighed the pros and cons, and there's a lot of assumptions out there. And in this video, I'm gonna cover if it was worth it or if it wasn't worth it. Alright, let's see if this is getting any easier. Hey there, my name is Emiliano, and I'm a first-year medical student at Humanitas University. Slightly easier, slightly more natural this time. Now before we start, there is some more context to this video and to my gap year. If you go watch this video, you can see how my gap year changed me, and if you look at this video, you can see how my gap year was supposed to go versus how it really went. But right now, I'm going to address the question, was it worth it? Now, let me answer that question straight away. Yes, my gap year was worth it, but let me explore why. Now, I'm only going to cover 4 main points, but these are the most important points that I could think of, and I really think that these are the ones that I should be covering. Number 1 is that most people aren't 100% sure of what they want to study. Number 2 is going to be that you're more grown up after a gap year than you are when you graduate high school, in many ways. Number 3 is going to be that you avoid burnout. And number 4 is that you get to know yourself. But let me go into detail starting with number 1 of how a lot of people don't know what they want to study. Ask adults around you, ask your parents, ask your grandparents, if they were completely sure of what they wanted to study when they were 16 or 18 years old, and then ask them what that was and compare them to what they actually studied in their career, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of very different and mixed answers. I'm sure you will, of course, have some people that have wanted to be doctors or firemen or lawyers throughout their entire lives since they were like 6. But I'm also sure that you'll get a lot of post hoc rationalization as to why they changed or why they didn't do what they wanted to do. So it's a fun thought experiment, and it'll make you realize that you're not the only person that doesn't know. If you don't know what you want to study, that's fine. That was me, and it's one of the main reasons that my gap year was worth it. It gave me more time to research universities, research careers. It made me be able to make a more informed choice that I'm sure is much less likely that I'll end up regretting later in life or later in my university career. Gap years also give you more time with less pressure to make a choice. While I was in school, most of the universities that people were choosing were either in the Netherlands, in the UK, in the US, or in their home countries. Now obviously this depended on the student, but that was where the majority of people were choosing to go. These 4 options weren't that great to me. But it wasn't until after my gap year started, after I had graduated from high school, that I heard about the possibility of studying medicine in Italy in English. And look at me, here I am today, about to start in a couple of days, which is really exciting. But yeah, if I hadn't taken the gap year, I never would have considered the possibility, or I would never have entertained the thought of studying medicine in Italy in English. Our second reason is that you're more grown up than you were in high school. Now obviously a year has passed, so you are obviously 1 year older, but that's not the only thing I mean when I say you're more grown up. I think there's a big jump from 18 to 19, but I think that jump is even more obvious when people have taken a gap year, because gap years do change us. Gap years do make us different. And even though I, for example, had no real responsibilities, no job, no salary, nothing like that during my gap year, I still feel more grown up. I don't want to use the word mature. I am using the word grown up here to mean more mindful, more aware of consequences, aware of decisions, aware of costs, aware of value, of opportunities. And not that I wasn't before the gap year, it's just that the gap year helped so much. And honestly, if you're struggling convincing your parents that you want to take a gap year and they don't want you to, this is one of the best reasons that I can give them. That I'll be a more responsible, more mature, more grown up student when I'm in college, when I'm in university, than I am right now just having graduated from high school. Reason number 3 is avoiding burnout. And I couple avoiding burnout with doing something meaningful, or at least something useful, which, as I'll explain in a few seconds, is more or less the same thing. We've spent so much time of our life studying in general, but also during these last 3 or 2 years of high school, because you really want to get into the university, or you really want to get good grades, etc. But we spend so much time studying that it can be more than worth it to take a year-long break, really recalibrate, re-energize, realize why you're doing it, what you want to do moving forward, etc. And then that allows you to, after this break, re-enter the university sphere, the academic sphere, the competition, so to speak, feeling much more revitalized with a clearer sense of purpose of what you're doing. So my advice to make your gap year even more worth it is to limit your academic activities during your gap year, limit them to a minimum. Sure, you can do internships, sure you can get a desk job if you want to, but if you can, find something else. Maybe do something with your hands, find something useful, something meaningful. Studying in and of itself, getting good grades is definitely useful for you. It's definitely something that you should be focusing on doing. But Eleanor Roosevelt had this quote that said, "Usefulness, whatever form it might take, is the price we pay for the air we breathe, the food we eat, and the privilege of being alive. And it is its own reward as well, for it is the beginning of happiness." And honestly, I think that making yourself useful with your hands, volunteering, donating your time, your effort, your presence, something like that is objectively useful to many people, or to a certain amount of people that goes beyond yourself, is one of the best uses of time that you can have for your gap year. And that's one of the things that'll make it feel like it was more than worth it. The last reason why I think taking a gap year is more than worth it is that it helps you to know yourself. Life should be like a buffet, especially during college and high school, but I think there's no better time to make your life a buffet than during your gap year, when you have no real responsibilities maybe, or you can carve out times that you're not studying or working or something to just do crazy things, just do things that you want to do. Maybe if your mission is to find what you want to study, if it's to find your passion, you can do things relating to that. For example, you could be shadowing a doctor on a Thursday, or observing a surgery on a Wednesday, and the next day you could be following a taxi driver around for their entire day to see how that goes. Then in a couple of weeks you could be observing a kitchen, and you could be shadowing a chef in their own kitchen, and the day after that you might follow a construction worker around and see how they live through their day and how they do the things they do. And then you might go to an architect and see, I want to see you plan a house, I want to follow this house from start to finish, from blank paper to sketch to plan to model, everything. The gap year gives you an opportunity to find out whether you're better at sketching than you thought. Maybe you wouldn't like to be a chef. Maybe baking is more of a hobby and less of an actual career path you want to go into. Maybe blood makes you faint. Maybe driving taxis is the most exciting thing you've done in a while, and you're thinking about being a taxi driver. And that's great. Maybe sitting down and being lectured at is not your thing. Maybe the university you were considering that you visited and you saw and you sat down on lectures, you're horrified at because their teachers are terrible and they scream at the students and they throw chalks and they throw dry erasers at them. Who knows? This is your time to try to live your life like it's a buffet. You don't need to travel necessarily. You don't need to do a lot of things that people think you need to do during your gap year. You just need to do things that'll make you know yourself more, and that'll lead to a level of introspection that just keeping up with the flow and going with the flow and keeping up with the momentum of what other people are doing probably wouldn't allow you to. That can make all the difference in the world. Taking this year off, treating it like you have 1 year to know yourself in a way that you wouldn't get to know yourself in a classroom surrounded by the friends you've always been surrounded by. That's what makes gap years worth it. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, commenting, subscribing, sharing this video. I really appreciate it. I have more videos on gap years right here, whole playlist. You can subscribe down here in the middle to not miss my next videos, which are gonna be awesome. I promise they're gonna be great. Medical school, gap years, IB, training, days in the life, vlogs, everything is coming. It's gonna be great. And over here, you can click on a video tailored specifically for you. All right, I'll catch you next week. Cheers.